There we go. All right. Yeah, you hear my dog barking in the background. Can you hear? He's in his crate, so he's going nuts.
Yes.
And now your dog, I know, he's probably saying, let him out. He'll be good. It's like, no, he'll come out and play.
Yes.
So what did I want to say? So financial leverage, sorry about that. Good. No, it wasn't recording. So debt ratio. So total liabilities divided by total assets. You can find your liabilities and assets on your balance sheet. So your debt ratio is in a percentage, it's at 41%. So you do have more assets than you do liability. When it gets to 1, that means you're pretty much maxed out. And when I was saying, if you want to compare it to your personal credit, I mean, they want to look for a low debt ratio here. They want you to have a little bit of debt just so that they can make sure that you pay bills on time. But you probably want to leave that maybe like 25%, 20%, because up here, it's almost half of what you make, you owe, which means you're living on a lot of credit. I mean, this isn't bad, but it's not great. So again, that's in a percentage. And then your interest coverage ratio talks about your earnings before interest and taxes, EBIT, divided by interest expense. This is at 149%. And actually, this pretty much equates to here. So before you have those loans that you have to pay, but before you've paid those taxes, do you have enough to pay your taxes? And it looks like they have like 59% enough to be able to pay, in their earnings, to be able to pay any interest or anything they have on those loans. All right. So when you look at the corporate earnings, you're going to look at your net profit margin, basic net income divided by total revenue. The higher the percentage indicates the company is efficient, and production operations, while a lower percentage reflects inefficient operations and poor management. So again, you want to definitely want to be able to generate enough revenue to give you an income. Return on assets, again, here's another one that I would sometimes go crazy on. Sometimes you'll see it as ROA, and sometimes you'll see it as ROI. But it's the same formula, net income divided by total assets. So for example, if you decide to purchase a new asset, it should be able to generate enough returns in net income in comparison to a risky financial investment. So if you decide to invest in maybe a new gym or something that you're going to add on, you're going to have membership attached to it. If you're going to spend $250,000 in, purchasing the gym and the gym equipment, you want to make sure that it's going to generate $250,000 in income. Are you going to be able to get enough members in there to make it worthwhile? So what is the return on your investment? When you're looking at return on equity, this is really more for stockholders, how much share of stock based on their income. Market value, again, looking at investors willing to contribute into a company where, where they feel like they're going to be earning. So market value, the price per share of common stock plus number of outstanding shares. The earnings per share is the income of the company divided by outstanding shares, because you have to pay out those dividends. So you want to make sure you have enough net income for all the shares that are out there. And price to earnings ratio, again, the price per share of common stock divided by the earnings per share. All right. I'm trying to remember what this case was about in the book. Budgeting, scope of work. I'm gonna skip through this one. But I know one of the reasons I wanted to keep this in here, because your assignment this week is budgeting, and they do give you the choice of things that you want to increase by 3% or leave the same. But every budget, make sure that you look at staffing fees and staff travel costs for any activation, especially in sports venues. And I believe it's for a tennis team for your assignment this week. And it's your responsibility to manage the cost at the end of each event and looking at an analysis of how closely your budget matched the actual. So what can we do with forecasting? Because that's a part of the assignment. You have to take it out for 2 years. So you're forecasting your budget for 2 years. And what variables can we use that can influence? So one of the things that they do in sports, which is a little different, as we always talk about, it's a business, but we're slightly different. Balanced scorecard is very similar to a SWOT analysis, which I'm sure you've learned about 1,000 times in your classes. The balanced scorecard is the same type of thing, but you put in things or common financial metrics, your revenue, budget, target, profits that are in there, more than just strengths and weaknesses. You put in some, actual analytics, like how much am I going to make as opposed to how much I spent, what is our target profit. And the other thing that you put in is internal business process, learning and growth and customer perspectives. So let's see, do I have it in here? One of the things that they'll do is you can put in customer satisfaction surveys, you can put in attendance, box office sales, things like that, because as I said, we're, sports, our fans are a little different. We are creating experiences for them. So that really needs to take into some accountability. More so, there's an opportunity to get more seats. It's like, our customers really responded to this event. They really like fireworks night. The families come out, they enjoy it because of their family. With these family events, we can generate this much revenue, spend this much and target. But influencing our opportunities or our threats, a lot of times with the BCS, a balanced scorecard, we're spending money for, last week we talked about moving people up the step for, marketing analytics and things. If I want to make someone a frequent season ticket holder, maybe spending this money because our customers said they really want family events, could make them a season ticket holder. If I have 5 fireworks events a night, but that you're not going to be able to analyze with just a straight SWOT analysis. Right. So that's why we kind of use the balanced scorecard. And as I said, having, some of those financial metrics on one side and, saying these revenues, from our customer survey, we're going to spend this, but, from our surveys, doing a firework night, 100% of the people or 75% of our ticket holders said they come to them because it's a family event, or they came to it because the food was great, or whatever. And that doesn't fall nicely into a SWOT.
Right.
So, and it's good because it can go for your particular organization. It can go in for your particular event, and you can do some real analysis quantifying those experiences. All right. So, so with that, you're looking at those key performance indicators, those KPIs, and any measurable value that demonstrates how effectively an organization is achieving key objectives. So we talked about organizations that have those membership cards and you scan them, and we talked about, I think you were mentioning that there's, if you're in the main concourse, there's a merchandising store every 10 feet. So, just having that information of, I can measure that. How many people are going or purchasing something from the stores?
Right.
Again, that doesn't fall right into a SWOT analysis, but if that explains to you why you should remodel the store or expand it, or staff it or whatever differently, again, that, just customer usage, so how do you balance that out? And finding, any performance indicator can be used. So you could have a column for, your metrics, or, financial metrics, and you can list all the things that you want here: revenue, budget, target, profit. And then on the other side, you would have your KPIs. So customer satisfaction, 75% are satisfied with games, 40% said that they returned to a game, or merchandise inventory. You could do a an inventory ratio in the merchandising department, whatever you wanted to use. So you'd have one column with KPIs and the other one you'd have financial metrics, and you balance those out. When we look at the value, again, the monetary worth of an item, it expresses what you could obtain on the open market, and your fair market value, net price of an asset that would result in a transaction between a willing buyer and a willing seller. So in your evaluation, you can look at the market transaction approach, which is just looking at the value of a comparable asset that's been sold within a reasonable time period, and then a discounted cash flow analysis, fair market value, determining the present value of its expected future cash flow. So similar to our budgeting and, making those forecasts. So I just want to take a minute and look at your assignment for this week. Oh, do we have any discussion questions this week? So what is our discussion board? Oh, wait a minute. That's week 3. We did that. Okay. Let's see. So our question this week, What is the value? What is the value of a team, league, or venue to going green? What is the financial impact of going green, and how does it impact attitudes and of fans and ultimately revenue? So do you think there's value in this effort? So what I'm going to do, because we do have time, I want you to take about 15 minutes, maybe do an article search or Google search and see what you can find out about some teams going green.
Okay.
And, and then we can go from there.
Awesome.
All right.
Yep.
All right. So what is it? 6:15. So about 6:30, 6:35, we'll come back and see what you can find on that. All right. Good. Yep. All right. We'll stop video for a minute. Okay. All right. Did you find anything about teams going green?
I did, just because I have prior knowledge about the Eagles initiative, their Go Green initiative. I started with that, and I got some information using some demographics and stuff based on NFL attendance that I feel like I can formulate something out of, make assumptions, but no causations yet.
Okay. All right. So from your assessment, first question is, what is the value of a team going green?
Well, I think the value is, one, in general, it looks good marketing wise, because you can market that you're caring about the earth and everything, and there's always a group of people that'll draw the interest of, whether it's fans who never paid attention to football before, or fans who are casual and now will pay more attention, because you are starting a Go Green initiative or something. You're going to catch somebody's attention, and it's always going to be positive. I don't think anybody can have a negative word to say about, oh, you care too much about the earth.
Right.
So it's going to, there's an inherent value there towards in marketing, and then it's going to help you, like we talked about last week, getting fans on board, where you then can take them up the escalator.
Okay. So I know you said you looked at demographics. Were you able to find anything on the financial impact of going green for the Eagles?
I don't think there was anything financially, like any financial data released. It was all more what they did to recycle and everything. I know they no longer send trash trucks out from their stadium. It's all, everything goes to a recycling bin or a compost bin or something. So I found an article back from 2016 that said that they were 100% trash bin free. So they don't put any extra stress on fans to sort trash with recycling bins and compost bins and stuff. They actually cut open every trash bag that comes down to the basement of the facility and then sort the trash from there. So I would assume they're saving money by not having a trash contract or anything. And then in other spots, it said that they weren't using traditional chemicals to clean with. They're using water solutions. So I would assume there's money savings there. But I couldn't find any actual financial data about how profits or margins have changed since their initiative.
Okay. And I think you may have addressed, the third question was, how does it impact attitudes of fans and ultimately revenue? I think we've covered that. And do you think there is value in this effort?
Why
or why not?
Definitely, because what I really looked into was, so I found attendance percentages by, what is it called? The generational age group. So Gen Z, Millennial, Gen X, and Boomers. And it showed that the Millennials were the largest group when it came to attending football games at like 36%. And then I found a different study about eco-friendly consumerism. And it showed that in general, they split millennials up into three different groups, like the young millennials, core millennials, and mature millennials. And compared those three to Generation X and baby boomers when it came to eco-friendly consumerism. And in general, actually, in all of the millennial groups found it more important to buy from eco-friendly companies and everything, and all these different questions that they ask compared to the other two. So in that regard, with the Go Green initiative and millennials doing their research, you're only going to create a larger or stronger fan base in that, which will generate more revenue and everything. And that's what it's all about. So getting the younger group of fans, which I would assume these trends would transfer onto the Gen Z, the younger generation. They just don't have a say right now because they're too young to be in
Right.
charge. But I would assume these trends would only continue, and that would help you with fan retention, gaining fans, and just overall more profitability.
Mhm. Okay, great. Yeah, I mean that's a great comparative analysis, looking at who your fans actually are, and if that's a large group, the millennials, and if that's a point of interest to them,
Right.
that they would consider as a value added, and make purchases from organizations like that. So that's great. So
Yeah.
that was a pretty good analysis with that. And again, that works right in with our scorecard. Here's the numbers, but this is the preference. So just looking
Right.
at that survey, we do have a good percentage of our fans. And as I said, just doing that, finding the key performance indicators. If, what do you look at your purchase or your facilities or something along those lines? And so how do you justify saying, let's have our own trash compactors or
Right.
whatever, at our facility? So if you're a facilities manager and then say, look, 36% of our fans are this age group and they care about the environment. So ergo, you should look at this number, not just saying, because it is more than just saying, oh, we're going to save money a few dollars
Right.
by doing this. No, we're going to actually get more fans.
Yeah.
Because we're going to generate even more money than just saying, oh, we saved $100,000 this
Right.
year, in 5 years, as you said, if you move that fan up the escalator, because, I don't know if you remember, like when the Vet or JFK Stadium was down there and they were really old and dilapidated and things like that. So people didn't want to go there as much, and they're really excited, and and that age group, they notice things like that. It's like, oh, there's no recycle bin or there's no trash cans. I mean, it's amazing, but we do.
Right.
I'm a baby boomer, but I still notice, and I can imagine the younger group who, I say it to my kids all the time. And when I was coming up, it was take out the trash, but I always say take out the trash and the recycles.
Right.
So it's kind of ingrained in their head and how they do things. They just recycle naturally.
Mm-hmm.
And if
that's what got me on just the path I went on, because being part of like that millennial age group, it's always something I've been like brought up with, is at least through school, it wasn't always at home, and then it transferred to the home with the more push from like government policies and stuff. But it's always been like recycle and then turn off your water, turn off your lights. So there's always been a huge green push. And I know even my wife, like, she doesn't buy Nike clothes anymore because they're not so eco-friendly or sustainable. And so I haven't had a new football jersey since I've started dating her, because they're all Nike. So it's just like, it's interesting of how big of an impact it is for the age, like it's had on the people that are around my age and everything. And it's definitely something that is important.
I love your wife already. I remember when my kids were younger, the big thing with Nike is that, they outsourced everything overseas.
Yes, that's the other part.
And they had, this labor problem and human rights issue and things like that. And I remember ingraining in my kids' heads, no Nike, no Nike. So they would come up, if they were in the store, if they're 6 or 7, and, it's like, okay, they couldn't get Michael Jordan's, but Allen Iverson, I want to say he was with Adidas. So like their basketball sneakers, they had to get Iversons. They couldn't get Jordans. And I only started allowing them to buy Nike products, I want to say it was high school sports.
Okay.
Because one of their teams were, a Nike team and stuff. So it's like, they came home with these basketball sweatsuits with Nike on them. And I was just like, you know what? hopefully it's ingrained, but I remember like my 5-year-old, it's like, Mom, can I get these? They're not Nike,
Yeah. Yeah, no, we're all Adidas here because they rank higher on the sustainability score or whatever.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
that's all we got.
It does make a difference. And I have a relative who works for it. And as I've been told, because I live in Germany, it's not Adidas, it's Adidas.
Yes.
That's
Yes, I've been told the same.
Yeah. I was with her over this summer, and anytime we were talking about work or whatever, everybody around it's like, yes, we know Adidas. So we will have Neil Schwartz join us at 7. Hopefully we should have a few other people. I've invited my students from the graduate sports management class to join us because they actually have a assignment on analytics. And as I said, for this week, so we've done the discussion board, just have to do the drill, and then what else are we going to have? The drill and your budget again. Make sure you look at all 3 spreadsheets to get your information you need to do for your homework this week.
And I have my week 3 assignment. There's an emergency in my neighborhood last night. The water main busted. So I didn't get to submit it last night, but I have it. I can submit it like right before Neil Schwartz gets on. I will submit that for you, so it's not late.
Okay. All right. Sounds like a plan. So we'll get another break. You can get water, Coke. Oh, here comes Nicholas, just in time for a break.
Yes.
And we are now recording.
Great.
Okay. Well, good evening, everyone. I want to introduce you to Neil Schwartz, our speaker this evening. Mr. Schwartz is the president of SBRnet Incorporated and has more than 2 decades of marketing and consumer research experience in the sports fitness and active lifestyle categories. Previously, Neil has worked for SportScan Info from Sports One Source, in addition to heading the research team at the Sports and Fitness Industry Association, FSIA, which I believe also has a student membership. So there's an organization, and if you're interested in that area, that you may want to join. Neil has been a featured speaker at many industry conferences and events. He is also well respected for his work with leading financial and investment firms, top brands and retailers in the sports footwear and apparel categories. As president of SBRnet, Neil is committed to growing the use of data throughout the academic and related commercial categories of sports management, sports business, sports marketing, and sports analytics. Neil is a graduate of Syracuse University with a major in communications and business. So with that, Neil, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Well, first of all, Dr. J, the first thing I need to do is to shorten that bio, because even I fell asleep during my own bio. So if that happens, you really need to shorten it. But I want to thank Dr. J for inviting me in to speak today. We actually just met last week, and we were talking about a number of the different things that we do and the number of things that we can provide, and talked to me a little bit about the agenda and the syllabus of the class. And I said, I'd love to come in, talk a little bit about using data, understanding data, using data for analytics. But, it really goes a little further than that. And, talking about good data versus bad data, because frankly, there's a lot of bad data out there, and learning about how to use data as part of the problem solving process. So I want to thank Dr. J for inviting me this evening. As you're going to tell, I have a high level of enthusiasm. The other thing is, I'm probably going to ask everyone to participate a little bit in in part of the discussion, especially early on. Because one of the things that we're going to do is we're going to understand, I'm a guy that talks about process a lot. When Dr. J mentioned the different topics that are being done in the class and the different assignments, I said, well, to me, it's really important to understand a process. What do I do when I'm giving an assignment? What do I do when you're out in the real world and your boss comes to you and says, Benjamin, I'm going to use you as an example because I can see you right on my right there. But, we're having a tough time selling season ticket packages or group sales, or our concession sales are down, or there could be a zillion different things they could come to you with. And, you're just not going to blurt out an answer. You're going to you're going to go through a process. And your part of that process is going to be to use data and understand what data is available, where the good data is, where the bad data is, and then how do I get the data organized so that I can turn it into a meaningful tool that really allows me to be able to make great decisions. Dr. J, what I'd like to do now is I have a short PowerPoint that I'm going to use kind of off and on. So I'm going to share with that now, if that's okay with everybody.
Yep.
Okay.
And I'm going to ask the students, if possible, if you can stay muted until you're asked to speak, but if you can turn your cameras on, because I just know it's hard to, as a speaker, and not see who's out there and what kind of reactions. That way we can kind of see if, are we losing you? So if possible, Nick and Igor, if you can turn your cameras on, that would be appreciated.
Come on, we're a small group. We can actually have a little bit of discussion, and I think we can make this a little bit more interactive than some of the larger classes that I've done that get a little bit unruly. So can everybody see my screen that says SBRnet and SMA?
Yes.
Yes.
That's a good start. And please unmute your microphones also, so that way, if I ask you a question, we can, I want to try to make this a little bit of a discussion, and hopefully we have a little, some good interaction. And the other side of this, if you don't want to interact, then don't. Won't hurt my feelings one way or the other. But I like it when people talk. I like to engage, as you can tell. So as Dr. J mentioned, I am president of SBRnet, stands for Sports Business Research Network. The company's actually been around since 1998. I bought the company 2 years ago. A gentleman named Dick Lipsey, who Dr. J knew, unfortunately passed away during the early phases of the COVID pandemic. He was older, he was 89, had a pre-existing heart condition. And when he passed away, his son, who I had known for a while, approached me and my partner, Mark, and we decided to buy SBRnet as well as Sports Market Analytics. As Dr. J said, I've been in market research for about 30 years, 26 focused on sports. I love sports. I'll be honest. I love to watch them. I used to love to play them a lot more when I was younger. I love talking about them, but more, than just runs and errors and watching games and all. I love the business of sports. And this really, when I had the opportunity to purchase SBRnet, really gave me a wonderful opportunity, to really be able to do something within the business of sports. My partner, Mark, and I each bring a different set of skills. I am the data guy. And, what people like to say is that Neil was data before Neil's been doing data before it was cool. I've been working with data. I've always felt that data-driven decision-making is better decision-making. I can't tell you how many times I've walked into a situation with a CEO or vice president of sales, and, I sit and listen, and, they're making decisions based on, hey, this is what somebody told me. And I'm like, my blood pressure goes up, about 10 points just when I hear somebody say that. But our company SBRnet is a aggregator or a platform of data that is used by about 250 colleges and universities in sports marketing, sports business, sports analytics, you name it. We're also very involved on the commercial side with teams, leagues, marketing, and advertising agencies. Again, all looking for kind of a one-stop place to be able to find the data they need. Look, could you go to 15 different places and find most of this data? The answer is yes. Some of it, though, is proprietary only to us, and that is our fan data. Every year, and the data, some of the data we're going to talk about today is that one of the things that we're most known for is our annual fan study. Every year we go out and we interview between 3,700 and 5,000 people, consumers 13 years and older, to get their fan preferences, what teams they like, what they plan to buy, how they plan to interact. And in fact, one of the things we're going to talk about and in an email that I got from Dr. J today was, how you research available analytics and what are the questions that you want to be able to answer. We're going to talk about what I think are the universal questions. They all start with the words who, what, when, where, why, and how. Generally, if you can answer all 6 of those questions that start with that word, you are well on your way to doing some problem solving. But we provide a wide variety of data. And that's really, I'm hoping that, as you start to see the way I'm using data, the way we're working with it, understanding how to use it, hopefully it'll be able to help you and guide you as you're working on your individual projects. Now, Dr. J did give me a little bit of a choice about what I could talk about. And I'm a Philly guy. Okay, I grew up in Philadelphia. I am a Philadelphia fan. That's me holding a bag of cannolis from Termini Brothers, probably the best Italian bakery in the world as far as I'm concerned, wearing my Philly shirt. On the right, that's me wearing my Philly shirt in front of the house I grew up in, also in Philadelphia. So I'm a Philly guy. So when Dr. J said, hey, let's do something about the Phillies, coming out of the pandemic, how did they do? What happened? How can we improve marketing, sponsorship, ticket sales, community involvement? There's just so many different things that we can get involved in. But again, I am a Philly guy, and so we're going to talk about the Phillies today. And we're going to talk about different aspects of the Phillies. But what I'd like to do is I want to talk a little bit about what I call the first step in every process. The first thing when you're given an assignment, the very first thing is I like to do an exercise called kitchen table research. Now, what does that mean? I coined it that because I always used to do it at my kitchen table. I'd grab my laptop, I'd sit down at my kitchen table, and I'd start banging away on my computer, on Google. I'd just start to put in all kinds of different phrases, all kinds of different issues, all kinds of different, areas to see really what came up. But I started off always asking myself, what do we need to know? Now, as we get through the exercise, I'm going to ask us, what do we need to know? If we're going to be doing an exercise on the Phillies. So I'm going to actually get out of this. And what I'm going to ask you is to all kind of contribute from this point on. And I'm going to start with you, Benjamin. Benjamin, we're working on an assignment to try to be able to grow either sponsorship, fans, whatever for the Phillies. What are some of the things that we need to know?
One thing that I used earlier in class just tonight was just the demographics by generation group, millennial, Gen X, baby boomers. Just to start there, to know who's your dominant market.
So we got generations, and I'm going to put and more. Now, let me ask you a question, Benjamin, to kind of put that back at you. Now, do we want to be able to look not just at the Phillies, but do we want to compare it maybe to some of the other teams in Major League Baseball? Do you think that is something that we would want to do?
I'd like to know what the percentage are for the whole league, but I'd like to focus on what we have at our park. Because maybe sorry. I was going to say we could maybe, if we see that we're lacking one area, we know we want to target that group of individuals, see why we have a lesser percentage there than another group,
sure,
or the league average.
I have always been a big believer in benchmarking. I can't type, but that's okay. Because, it's very funny about benchmarking is if you don't know where everyone else is, how can you really gauge where you are? So if you're operating at above or below, let's say the league average, or even let's say I'm going to call the regional average. So maybe what you're going to do is, I'm going to group all of the teams in, let's say, Pennsylvania, Maryland, so I'm going to take the Nationals and I'm going to take the Pittsburgh Pirates and the Phillies and maybe the New York Mets, the New York Yankees. I know I'm missing a team there somewhere, but so I'm going to look at a whole region or a whole group of teams for the sole purpose, Benjamin, of being able to benchmark.
Right. Gotcha.
Michael, what are some of the other things that we think we would need to know?
I think like
Michael, I can't hear you that well. I'm sorry. Better?
now, or do I need to turn it off?
No, I can't hear anything. Igor, are you able to speak to us? I'll come back to Michael.
Yeah, Igor said that he was multitasking. Nicholas, are you still there? He keeps going in and
I
out.
saw him.
Yes,
Hey,
I am.
Nicholas.
Hello.
Nicholas, what are some of the things that you might want to know as we're working, to understand what's going on with the Phillies?
I would like to see how they operate in an international market. I think that's very interesting.
International, what are we going to call this? International.
operation,
Yeah.
international marketing.
Okay. Michael, are you fixed up yet on that microphone? It's funny, I can't hear him. Oh, well.
No,
How about
it's
you,
real-
Benjamin? We'll go to you now
loud.
again.
So beyond the international market and the age demographics, maybe you want to see the interaction with other businesses, sponsorships and such.
Yeah, sponsorship is interesting. I think it might be, oh boy, I really can't spell, can I? But that's an interesting point. But how about wins and losses? How about going back to the basics? How have they done over the last 5 years in terms of
Right.
wins and losses? How about payroll?
Mhm.
Don't you think it would be important to be able to know maybe what their payroll is as opposed to, let's say, the teams around them? Are they,
Right.
are they cheapening out or are they overpaying? Where are they at with respect to payroll? How about the cost of ticket? How about the cost to go to a game? There's something out there called the fan cost index. And what the fan cost index tells you is how much does it cost to take a family of 4 to a typical game? So how much is a ticket? How much is parking? How much is hot dogs and beer and soda and all the things that go into it? How about the cost of going to a game? Is that something you think you'd want to take a look at?
Yeah, I mean, I know it. I know I became a Sixers fan because I could afford it while they were very bad. So I know that's something that it probably should be looked at.
What other kinds of data points? How about Dr. J? How about you helping out here? What do you think would be a good data point that, could really help you as you're understanding the Phillies?
I would want to know where, beyond the demographics, their fans, males, females, minorities. I would also want to know where they are as far as social media, do they have, you had mentioned, Cincinnati Bengals have so many fans, they don't bet, but our Phillies fans, old people like me that are on Facebook and would just follow them on Facebook, or
Me too,
or
by
they
the way.
or are they the young people that want to do the Instagram or things? So social media, I would want to look at, again, to hopefully how am I going to market to my fans? Where are their fans and where, how can I reach them? What platforms work?
Philadelphia is a highly competitive sports market. You've got the Phillies, the Flyers, the Eagles, the 76ers. I don't know if there's any really minor league teams, but you've got some serious major league firepower in Philadelphia. Don't you think you'd want to know, what are the difference between, let's say, Philadelphia Phillies fans versus the fans of people in those other sports? And then how all they interact with, I'm pointing like you can see what I'm pointing to, like it's a board. But how about looking at the competitive sports landscape? I like to call that, by the way. NDSCAPE. Okay. So you know what? That is a really good list. All of this data can be learned just by doing kitchen table research. And in fact, I did some myself today. Let me show you some examples. So I typed in cost to go to a game. Well, this company called, actually, I got to change back for a second. Give me a sec here. View.
Did you want to share your screen for that? Because you're not sharing now.
I'm not?
No.
Oh, I thought I was. Oh, I stopped sharing. My bad. You know what? I'm going to reshare here. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Everybody seeing what do we need to know?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so what I did was I did my own kitchen table research. And I went on and I didn't do it actually at my kitchen table today. I actually did it sitting at my desk here while I was eating my lunch. So if I was eating my lunch, does that count? Okay. I'm gonna let it count. So the first thing I wanted to do is I went backwards a little bit and I wanted to look at, okay, what does it cost to attend a game pre-pandemic versus post-pandemic? Well, I went to a site called the Team Market Report. Now, it just so happens I know that Chris, the gentleman that owns this site, and have access to this data. Now, this is not part, by the way, of SBRnet at the current time. We're looking, Dr. J, to bring this in as part of the service. Right now, it is not. So if any student wants to work with this and this data, just reach out to me directly or through Dr. J, and I'll be happy to provide this to you. But what this does is that it literally calculates how much it costs to go to a game and so the attendance they average, how much it costs per person. It just gives you an incredible wealth of information. In fact, the Phillies are right around the middle, right here in the middle, at approximately where they are. Their fan cost index, they are ranked 11th, with the highest, of course, being the highest actually fan cost is the Chicago Cubs, which actually, by the way, surprised me. Just out of curiosity, why do you think the Cubs have the highest fan cost index? Does anybody have an idea? Any of you guys economics majors or are taking economics courses?
I think I've taken one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, what's the first thing when you walk into an economics class? What's the very first thing they teach you? The very first. Everything in economics is a function of what?
Come on, you guys got to know this.
Somebody's got to know this. Come on, Bjork.
Right?
Supply and demand. Exactly right. So Chicago, what do they have? Well, they've got the smallest supply, the Chicago Cubs, the smallest supply of seats. I believe the stadium only seats about 29,000.
Oh, wow.
And the demand is really high. So what they're able to do is they are able to charge a lot of money for tickets. So again, you have the ability to be able to understand. So this site right here is called the Team Market Report. And in this, it gives you all of the teams in the league and then where they stand in terms of what it costs to go to a game. And by the way, here's the key. So, ticket price, general, beer, soda, size of, you name it, hot dogs, all the important stuff. So you can use this data to understand, are the Phillies maybe pricing themselves out of the marketplace? It's pretty a good question. So again, as you're looking at how you're going to solve a particular problem, there's some data. I'm going to take you also, this is previous year. So you want to start looking, even this is 2019. Now, let me talk about this for a bit. One of the single most important things in data analytics is that you cannot work with single data points if you can avoid it. Why? Benjamin, I keep hating myself for picking on you, buddy, but
Please keep your camera on if you
you're a
can.
willing participant.
Yes.
Why is it
So
that you
get
think
you in
need
here.
multiple data points?
It gives you a better representation of the entire picture. You just look at one, you could be looking at an outlier.
Exactly right. Exactly right. You need to look at trends because you can have an outlier like we did with the pandemic. You could have an outlier where you get a situation like the Florida Marlins a number of years ago when they went from like first to worst or worst to first, in the span of like a year or two because they bought basically a great team. And again, so you always need to look at multiple data points. I like to call them trends. What are the trends telling you? Are the trends telling you that it's costing more or less to go to a Phillies game? And then you can actually compare this, by the way, to every other league. So you could do this for the NFL. How much does it cost to go to an NFL game in the same period for the Philadelphia Eagles? So let's see here. The Eagles. Actually, they're pretty high up there, it looks like. So, the fan cost index looks like for the Eagles is, wow, $657. That's a lot of money. So again, you lay this out, you could lay out 4 years of fan cost index data for all 4 of the professional teams. That's going to give you a great view of things. What's happening? Are we overcharging? Are we undercharging? Are we getting, are we at the bottom of the scale, at the top of the scale? Because all of these factors go in to being able to create, a great strategy. Then I also talked a little bit about looking at wins and losses. This was, what I typed in? Major League Baseball wins and losses. I went to literally the first entry that came up, and it was a Wikipedia page, and look what they had. They had wins and losses from, for the last, I want to say like 20 years, and you could literally go back, look at any single year that you want to, look at each individual team, look at their won-loss percentage, because, it's funny. When you start looking at things like attendance against won-loss percentages, you might find an interesting correlation. A team that, let's say, loses but continues to have, let's say, good attendance and a high fan cost index, you know what? Maybe the fact that they keep losing is part of their strategy. Hey, we don't need to spend a lot of money on players because guess what? We're filling the stadium anyway. But maybe a team like the Phillies, okay, who's not exactly doing a great job. Let's see here. The Phillies average attendance here. Let's look at the Phillies for a second. Washington Nationals. Let's hear the Philadelphia Phillies. So they've had a winning percentage of below 500 or 0.472. So below 500. And again, it's 9,000, almost 10,000 wins against 11,000 losses. So again, you want to be able to look at win-loss data. And again, you start piling the data up. Everything in 4-year trends. Everything in 4 years. So when you start to build your spreadsheets, everything's in 4-year trends. So when you start looking at it, we start going back and looking at what we need to know. We're not going to get to demographics here, but we're going to look at wins and losses. You can get payroll information off the internet, cost of going to the game, fan cost index. We're going to get to that later. And we do the competitive sports landscape from both the fan cost index and other places. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about that on my site when I get there. In fact, I'll talk about it now. So where we are now is we're at SBRnet. And as a subscriber to SBRnet, the Wilmington University Library, you simply are able to access this data via the Wilmington University Library site. Dr. J, what are we looking at timing wise? 7:45, what are we thinking?
Yeah, no, but the hard stop probably at 8. So
Okay, I'm going to probably I'll run out of gas by then, but we're getting there. So you all have access to this data, and it's an incredible amount of data, just an incredible amount of data, because you literally have the ability to be able to go in and compare data for all of the major team sports. So you can look at baseball and literally get at all of these different data points, attendance profile for Major League Baseball. So you get a look at attendance. You can get a look at it and understand the demographics by gender, by age, by household income. Where is this going to become important? Benjamin talked about this. Maybe you want to focus on household income, and you want to take a look and see where the household incomes fall for each one of the different sports. An incredibly important statistic, because let's face it, going to athletic events, while, some people, do it from a corporate standpoint, but, a young family of 4 wants to take their kids to a professional sports game. Football game might be a little bit prohibitive in terms of, but maybe baseball might be a great place for parents to start, teaching their kids about team sports and bringing them to this great, event, entertainment at, what's the name of the stadium in Philadelphia? Citizens Bank Park. I should know. I did a study there a couple of years ago. So again, you've got a wealth of data that's available to you. But what did I say? Always collect it in 4s, at least years of 4. So, again, here's ticket prices. Now, this is only from 2020 because we got this, by the way, from the team sport. So, but again, so this data might not be as valuable for you because you only have 1 year's worth, but you can get more years worth off of the team sports report. But, highest paid, you can even go into the, I talked a little bit about payrolls. Does the payroll of a team, excuse me, match up to their win-loss record? Again, these are all the kinds of things that you could be looking up. But now, where I would like to take you is into an area in our premium section. You have access to this. Remember, I talked a little bit about our proprietary sports fan studies? Well, every year, SBRnet does a study where we cover 17 sports, major league, minor league, college and international soccer and auto racing. Nicholas, unfortunately, I'm not going to have a whole lot of international data, but we'll get to that in a few minutes. But,
that's not
baseball.
an issue.
What's that?
That's not an issue. I understand that.
It was actually a good suggestion. So here are the studies. 17, 18, 19, and 20. 21 data will be posted in about 6 weeks. So all of this data, I'm going to bring it out to here. This is, of course, the wrong data. This is the right data. All of this data is available in Excel formats. What I recommend is that you download all 4 years. So you download 17, 18, 19, and 20, and then look at what I would call, let me get rid of that. Look at a number of the key data points that you think are going to be important. And let me show you real quickly where you start. Remember earlier I talked about good data, bad data? It's always a good idea to understand exactly the kinds of data that we're looking at. Is it good data? And my methodology page is not here. Okay, hang on. Okay, there's supposed to be a methodology page before this one, the tabs. This is this table of contents. So what you'd like to do is that, again, what you want to do is you want to be able to go in, look at all of the different data that's available. Now, this is Major League Baseball for 2017. A lot of this data here is strictly Major League Baseball in general. But when you get down here into the this area, favorite major league team for those who attended. We click on here and it literally takes you to the team by team data. So literally here we can compare, remember we talked about the Phillies against the Orioles, against the Mets, against the Nationals, or here somewhere. So you have the ability to then go and look at the data across 4 years. And then as you go across the x-axis on the top, we literally have all of these different data points: gender, age, household income, region of the country, whether they purchased apparel or not, licensed apparel from that particular team. Did they attend the game? Now, just a caveat. In 2020, we did not ask people if they attended a game. Why do you think that is? Anybody want to take a shot at that?
Because it was a year where COVID took place, and then the numbers would have been unequal to the years, decades before, and therefore it wouldn't have been relevant for the collection of data.
Exactly right. Nobody was going to games. It would have created that outlier or anomaly year. So we made a conscious decision as researchers, actually I made it, that we did not want to ask people about attendance in 2020, but we did ask people about their fandom, their fan behavior, because we felt a lot of people, and in fact, you will find out that we asked people about, have they started watching only since the pandemic? And so we were able to look at this kind of new fan phenomenon as a result of the pandemic. But again, that's only in 2020. Of course, I didn't mean to do that. So we have the ability to be able to look at data, again, 4 years across all of these different categories. Dr. J talked a little bit about social media. So you might want to compare, let's say, Twitter usage versus Facebook usage for us old farts versus Snapchat versus Instagram. Now, we only started measuring TikTok last 2 years, but we have included TikTok. But again, what you want to do is you want to start your data collection process. You want to start that collection process. Bring as much data. You're not trying to solve you're not trying to do any analysis yet. You're not trying to answer any questions yet. What you're doing though is this data collection. Bring it under this, bring it under the tent metaphorically in Excel, so you really have access to it. So again, you pick out which data points you're looking at. Here's a really good one, by the way. You talked a little bit about sponsorship interaction. Well, we ask a question to everybody who takes it. How influenced are you by sponsorships that you see either in stadium, obviously attendance, or on television? And we measure it by, let me just try to make this a little bigger. So extremely or very, moderate or slightly or not at all. So again, here's where you have an opportunity. You talked about sponsorship. Well, it's really important for sponsors to know how are their fans interacting with the various sponsorships. We're always looking at the categories that we cover when it comes to looking at helping you with sponsorship data. We've dropped a bunch of them. I don't ask about cars anymore. I just don't. We don't ask about, actually we do ask fast food. There's a number of there's a number of categories that we've dropped just because it just became, it just became too much a part of the fabric of the event or the sport. But we're now asking questions like about travel. We're asking more hotel, more vacation travel. We're asking questions about healthcare, insurance. All of a sudden you can't turn on television, a sporting event, without seeing an ad for State Farm or Progressive or, any one of these insurance companies for home, auto, and life insurance. Or the other thing we can't see now is sports gambling. Not a question, not a set of commercials goes by now without a gambling. So we get into sports gambling now. 4 years ago wasn't as big a thing. The last 3 years we have added sports gambling in a much bigger way. And this year, we will actually be asking people to tell us if it's legal in their state, which platform they've used. Caesars or BetMGM or any of the different there are right now, we've estimated 46 different online platforms that people could have used. State of Illinois, for instance, has their own unique platform. New York right now has their situation. I mean, so it's a real, it's just blowing up, for lack of a better word. By the way, we estimated that there's going to be about $4.5 billion bet both legally and extra legally. We're not calling it illegally, but extra legally during the Super Bowl. It'll be I know, look, Dr. J's shaking her head.
Yeah.
You got your bets. You got your bets ready, Dr. J. You're working the numbers to figure out what you're going to do.
I don't know. My sons were, just talking about it. So, what did they say? I don't know what they called it, but if they had, a band $1,000. If I had dropped the band on the game, I would have made money. And he said that like at the 2-minute warning, because we just knew Kansas City was going to win.
Yeah, well, surprise.
I was just like, no, don't waste your money. And I was like, oh, aren't you glad you didn't? But yes, I never would have. And we don't go to Atlantic City or anything like that. And I was like, really? But that's a younger generation. My generation didn't really think about, we were, that was for old people to go sit at the tables and play poker. But now,
changed a lot.
Sports betting has gone crazy.
So now, as we've gathered our data, we've looked at our trends, we've picked out what we think are the key data points. We've analyzed the data. Are things growing or are they declining? How are they doing benchmark against other competitive sports in the same city? How are they doing in relationship to their own sport in the regional or surrounding area? What you do is you want to pick out all of these different data points, and hopefully these data points will allow you to answer the key questions. Who? Male, female, gender, age, generational. Benjamin, you were so right, because the generations are so dramatic. Dr. J, I don't know, I'm a baby boomer. And, what's that?
I am too.
Okay, so Dr. J and I are baby boomers. I'm guessing most of you guys are Gen Zs. As you're looking at the data, you'll start to see how each generation interacts differently with sports. Dr. J and I grew up, we probably started listening to Major League Baseball on radio. God, that makes me sound so freaking old, but I'm really not. Either is Dr. J. So I'm asking the who questions. Who are these people? What's their gender? What's their income? What are their education levels? Where do they live? Are there children in the household? All of these different things that tell me who they are. Who? What do they do? What teams do they follow? What other teams? So if you're a Phillies fan, what other teams are you likely to follow in the Philadelphia area? What social media platform do they tend to gravitate towards if they're a Phillies fan? How do they, well, I'm gonna ask you how, but again, who, what, when? When's not as important when talking about professional sports, because professional sports have a season. Baseball focuses on, spring, summer, fall. Football is fall, winter. So when is not as critical as it is in some other cases, like vacation travel, when you look at things like that. So in sports, when is not really as big a deal, but, it is important to understand, and this goes back again also to competition. If you're in the spring, summer, fall, what other sports, are you competing against? Well, in the fall, you're competing against NBA coming back, the Eagles coming back, the NHL and the Flyers coming back. So you have to understand a little bit about the timing. Where do my fans live? Do they live in in the area? Do they live outside? How many fans do I have internationally? Now, Nicholas, that would be something that you would probably have to go back out onto the internet, because there's no one place where you can get all the data you need. But you could find that data, the why. Now, I'm going to tell you that is the single toughest question to answer. And I'm going to tell you why. Why is the thing about why do we do what we do? Why do we like the teams that we like? Why do we root for the Phillies? Why do I root for, the Miami Dolphins? Why is getting into those deep-seated emotions that tie us to the particular sports teams, the particular cities, the particular brands, the particular universities, whatever it might be? Why is a much bigger question, much bigger, because it's understanding motivations, it's understanding sentiment, it's understanding the underlying factors. And in a lot of ways, I try to steer clear students away from doing the why question unless you're going to be fielding your own survey. If at the end of the class you said, Dr. J said, look, you know what? We're going to write a survey, and then we're going to go see if Neil will help us field the survey. Because what we want to do is we may want to understand, why are people Phillies fans? Why do they like a sport? Why do they like a team? Why does anybody do what they do? Look, I can get into some deep, I remember back, has anyone taken any psychology classes too? I feel like I've taken a lot of good classes that were tangentially, when I sat there saying, I'm not going to need this stuff. But now, 40, that gave away my age. 40 years later, 40, let's go with 40. Let's go with 30. Yeah. So, I learned about something called Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And I know Dr. J knows exactly what I'm talking about, but this psychologists developed this hierarchy that we all really, need these needs that we need to fulfill, whether it's need for love, need for shelter, need for food, need for, encouragement, need for support, need for all these different things. These are really the things that motivate us, and understand that. But again, and then how is the last question. How are we going to be able to answer, do these things? Are we going to use social media? Are we going to use conventional media? Are we going to use print media? Are we going to use electronic media? So again, it's the who, what, when, where, going to skip the why, and how. If you can answer those 5 questions, or at least have one answer in every one of those boxes, except for the why, guess what? You're ready to move on to what I would call where it gets really interesting. And that is the last thing that I always like to do is the SWOT analysis. Now, again, something I learned back in school, but the SWOT analysis is where I take a look at what are my strengths, what are my weaknesses, what are my opportunities, and what are my threats? Because this is where you start to put strategy together. Strategy builds on strengths, avoids my weaknesses, examines my opportunities, and then looks over my shoulder to see where the threats are. That's what the threats are really what I like to call the litmus test, or the final step in the process. So really it's all about, number one, starting off at the kitchen table, doing the kitchen table research, answering the questions of who, what, when, where, how, and then maybe why. And then matching that up into a SWOT analysis. But again, I want to come back to is always about, one, making sure we're looking at trending data, 4 years, 5 years, 10 years, but try to stay away from single data point analysis, because there's really no analysis when you do a single data point. If 20% of X, or 20% of 100 is always going to be 20, and and that's all you have, there's no trend. You always want to look at a trend. Is it a declining trend or an accelerating trend? Dr. J, as part of analytics, do you also work in teaching regression and how they need to understand how to do regression?
We do. In this particular class, they understand the actual principles of regression analysis and what the formulas are. If they go on, we have a sports analytics certificate. If they add that in there, then they're going to be taking those data points in the analytics classes and really using them. But they, they know about, finding their dependent variables and their independent variables. So they understand the concept. I don't quiz them as much in
fine.
this particular class.
But being able to use regression, though, to be able to just take a look at the existing data and then be able to project out in the future, is an incredibly valuable skill. And in fact, is one that I would really say to everybody is really important. Learn those Excel skills, pay attention. Excel is an incredible tool. I am not a data scientist. I do not know how to write code. I do not how to use, I do know how to use Tableau, but I do not know how to write in R or R Studio. I do not know how to do any of that. But I do, I am a fairly good with Excel. And I can tell you, learn how to do pivot tables. Learn the regression formulas are actually built into Excel, so you don't even need to write them. It'll ask you, your independent, your dependent variables. It'll allow you to do multiple variable analysis. So, don't be, I would say be hesitant necessarily about, doing that sort of analysis. I want to show you a couple little things also on my site real quickly, if you don't mind, and then I'm going to wrap up and answer any existing questions. On our site, one of the most important areas, though, is our super search or mega search. That's right up here in the upper right-hand corner. This is always a wonderful place to start. If I'm doing something for the Phillies, guess what I'm typing in? Phillies. And when you type in Phillies, what's going to happen is it's going to deliver responses of, these are all of the articles. So we have a team that actually brings articles into our site to be able to help you. So instead of having to go and do Googles and start looking up things, you literally have the ability. I just noticed something interesting too.
Yeah.
But it's duplicated. But so here are all the articles. Here is all the relevant research that we have on Major League Baseball and the Philadelphia Phillies. So you have an opportunity to see, okay, type in the Phillies. Here's all the other baseball. Let's say Major League Baseball. How about MLB? So use the search feature. I can't stress it enough. There is just so much information and data that we have available through the SBRnet site. The other thing I want to show you is in our resource center. We have a couple of things that I think could be really important. Number one is if you're serious about a job in sports, we've produced our web series called My First Job in Sports. And in here, we've interviewed, recent graduates just like yourselves, who have recently graduated from school. They wanted to get a job in sports, and they tell their tale about what it is, how they were able to get a job, what they wish they would have learned that they didn't learn. Inevitably, a lot of them say, I wish I would have paid more attention and gotten better Excel skills. But, Noah Rubin, who is actually the grandson of a friend of mine, but he is the head of inside sales and customer service for the Washington Nationals, his third job out of school. So he was able to get that job that he wanted. Scott Kaufman-Ross, a really interesting story. Scott Kaufman-Ross, we talked to Scott a number of weeks ago. Scott is being talked about as potentially the next commissioner of the NBA. Scott talked a little bit about how he, got to this point of he is head of gaming and new business ventures. He didn't start out in sports. He actually started out in finance, but his love of sports drew him to it. So, look, I'm not saying you need to run out and watch these tonight. They're available both as audio and video. So if you're a podcast person, you can listen to them on Apple Podcasts or any other podcast platform, or if you'd rather just watch them. I please encourage you, and Dr. J, I encourage you to encourage your students to also watch them. And by the way, Dr. J, if you've got somebody who you think would be a great candidate for us to interview, I'm counting on you for you to, get some names to me, and we'll make sure that we add them to the list. We've got 11 people. We've got actually the next person we're interviewing is the head of data science for the New York Giants.
Okay.
Really excited about that. We've got a list of great podcasts. So again, whatever interests you, in sports. You know, one of my favorites right here is The Business of Sports with Jason Kelly and Michael Barr. I happen to know both Jason and Michael, and Bloomberg does a great job with their Business of Sports podcast. But there's a lot of really good top people to follow on social media. You know, check these people out. Alex Silverman. Alex is one of the most knowledgeable reporters when it comes to the sports world. You know, follow these guys on social media. It's amazing what you can learn. And it's also amazing that you can build your network, because that's what it's really going to take when you get out of school. Your network, friends, people you know, some one of you is going to send me an email 2 years from now or a year from now. Hey, Neil, you hear of anything going on or blah, you know what? And I answer all the emails. Use your network. Go into our site. Learn to figure out which people I need to be following.
That's what I wanted to, I wanted to remind the students to, if you'll allow them, to link in with you, hopefully within the next 24 hours. And because this is how you build a network, with Neil being able to say, hey, I know Glenn Pizer. He's the head coach. He's a football and a wrestling coach here in the Delaware area. Hopefully moving on to collegiate sports and things like that. So, I have Igor was just on from Brazil. Nicholas is a soccer guy, already works for the Philadelphia Union with their academy, and will be graduating. Do you graduate this spring or next fall, Nicholas?
Because I've switched the school, it's going to be next fall.
Next fall. So, we're, and you're originally from Germany.
Yes, from
right?
Germany and Hamburg.
Hey, Nicholas, out of curiosity, are you using a lot of data analytics in your player development areas, or are you not quite up to that yet?
We have a player development department working besides the coaches and academy director. And then it's basically an interaction between data analytics department, sports performance departments, and the coaches to provide the athletes with how do I say that? With the best development they can get. Yeah.
Because every sport is really just, really embracing. While we don't have a lot of performance data on our site, we do have links to a number of what we call key sites that do offer performance data. This one, Understat, specifically for soccer, but there's a lot of really good information here. It breaks it out by each, it breaks it out by the different leagues, and I should have gotten rid of that, but oh well. So, but again, it gives you a lot of really good data, Nicholas. So, I mean, we do have performance data. It's just not really our area of expertise.
I already looked at that soccer data from Understat.
Got it.
Interesting.
Good.
Especially with the XG, and then you could also look at the PPDA, for example, the pressing intensity, but all that is not in there. It's more including basketball, football, and American sports. For soccer, it's improvable, I would say.
Someday we can't confuse it with football and football. It's too confusing there, Nicholas.
It is actually football. It is not.
I see.
A debate is starting.
Here we go. We'll start off our next class with that debate.
Yeah, but the point really is that SBRnet is in our library database. We have the subscription for it. The premium package hopefully will be here by the summer to get all the Excel. So for the summer and fall classes, you'll be able to get all of that. That's our goal.
Dr. J, you do have access to these. You don't have access to the special extracts, which actually make everybody's job a lot easier, but I didn't want to show them because you don't have access to them yet.
Okay. But we do, the important thing to know, when we put that on the database, is that this site is a good way, has everything housed under one umbrella to get to those sites that are going to be purposeful for you and your projects. So you don't have to go through Google and weeding it all out. As Neil had showed us, you can just put in Phillies, and then you can go to the sites in the things that you want under one umbrella, as opposed to going out on the whole World Wide Web and searching back and forth. So it's a good place just to get started, whether it keeps you in the site or takes you other places. It's a good database to launch your searches for your projects. And that's what I, really hope you'll be able to do. Oh, we got one of our
Any
grad
questions? Any questions? I know I ran overtime, which is not a surprise given me.
Michael, does your mic work yet?
Well, your microphone's up at the top of your head, so that may have something to do with it.
Yeah,
It's up here.
Oh, move your earpiece.
I don't think you realize his microphone,
around your mouth.
the boom microphone is up by his head, top of his head.
Oh, that's because you can hear him, but it's not all the way closed. Just move the mouthpiece to your mouth.
Don't worry about it.
did that one?
There you go.
Well, I have like 5 different microphones in my room right now.
You're over technology,
know.
Michael.
I didn't know if it was the one that was plugged in.
So here's what I'll do, because this is a smaller group tonight. Dr. J, I'd like to come back again, maybe middle of the term, talk a little bit more. If any of you want to send some of your work product to me and have me take a look at it, ask me some questions via email, I will be happy to, respond back and help people. So I was a fan of the original Dr. J, and I'm now a fan of the new Dr. J.
Yes, because no one knows how to say Wardle. Nobody.
I could have said Wardle, but that's okay.
Yeah,
I like Dr. J much. I like Dr. J much better.
Yeah, so do I. So do I.
Okay.
My maiden name was Hofer, Hoefer. No one wanted to say that, and then I married a Wardle. You think I would go for a Jones or something? So Dr. J, I'm enjoying that piece. Mike, any questions? Learn anything? Would you have any? You're a sophomore now.
I think I'm like just entering junior year or something like that.
Okay, so he's just getting started. So what do you think of analytics?
I think it's good so far. I kind of been like looking at it a little bit here and there throughout, just watching the sports and being part of like different little coaching things from like Perfect Game and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I just think it's like very informational and changing the game of sports as we know it.
Mm-hmm.
Sure is.
Yeah, there was some great during the games analytics commercials from the NFL on their sports equipment, their shoulder pads that they have out now that were trying to keep the players safe. And I said, oh, that's new. We talk about it in marketing. Who are they talking to about?
If you saw some of those new helmets that some of the players were wearing, some of those helmets that they're wearing actually now have sensors inside of the helmets. And literally doctors are able to manage or able to visualize the pressure and the amount of impact that each player is incurring from hits, and being able to have coaches pull players off the field when they reach a certain threshold to prevent them from having to go into concussion protocol. So, there's really a lot of great, advances. I'm also very much tied in with a lot of equipment manufacturers. I've done a lot of work in that area too. Dr. J, I want to thank you for the opportunity tonight. And, I hope to be invited back.
Yes, we'll definitely have you back. I know we're at the end. Ben or Nicholas, any last comments before we let Neil go?
Just thanks for coming. I appreciate
Welcome,
it.
Ben.
I enjoyed listening and interacting.
Thanks for being my foil. I needed somebody on this one. So thank you. Thank you, Benjamin. Thank you, Dr. J. Michael, Nicholas. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Neil. I'm sure they'll spread the word, and their classmates will say, oh, we need to be here. All right. So that's it for tonight, guys. We do have a sports management club meeting tomorrow night at the same time. So hopefully if you're available, you can join in. Always looks great to have an extracurricular on your resume. So attend a couple of meetings so I can vouch for you.
Awesome.
All right.
Yep.
Everyone have a great week.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Too.
All right,
Thank
bye.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.